What is carbon credit? The carbon trading mechanism you need to know the most. What is carbon credit? Where did it come from? Why buy carbon credit? Carbon credit is the right to carbon emissions, and organizations with high carbon demand must purchase this right to increase permitted emissions. In order to reduce climate warming, countries signed the Kyoto Protocol in 1997 to set targets for greenhouse gas reduction, with a flexible reduction mechanism. And carbon emission permit trading was established at this time. The flexible reduction mechanism can be divided into two parts according to the mode of operation. 1. Sale of unused carbon emission credit. If the country or company does not reach the upper limit of carbon emissions, sell unused units to organizations that have not reached the reduction target. 2. Assist other organizations to reduce carbon emissions. Investing countries provide funds or transfer technologies to help other countries reduce emissions and obtain emission reduction certificates or emission reduction units. The principle of carbon credit is to internalize external costs and increase organizational carbon emission cost to promote energy conservation and carbon reduction. The concept of carbon credit originated from Coase's theorem. As long as the property credit of resources are clearly defined, no matter how the resources are allocated at the beginning and transaction costs are minimal, the market mechanism will allow this resource to achieve the most appropriate pricing and allocation. In other words, to limit the total amount of carbon emissions and credit, organizations that need more carbon emissions will purchase carbon credit in the market. When the carbon credit reach the optimal price, the carbon emissions will be optimally allocated. However, organizations with high carbon emissions need to purchase carbon credit, which leads to an increase in manufacturing costs. They will find ways to reduce carbon emissions, so as to achieve the effect of carbon reduction. For the automobile industry, there is an incentive to go to the market to buy carbon credit due to the need to comply with strict carbon emission caps. On the EU Carbon Exchange, the world's largest and most complete trading system, the power generation industry, energy-intensive industries, and the aviation industry in the European Economic Area are forced to join the emissions trading system, and these high-emission industries are strictly monitored. Products that need to be sold in the European Union must also comply with relevant emission restrictions. For the automotive industry, the EU will start a new threshold of 95 grams of carbon emissions per kilometer in 2021, but the average carbon emissions of vehicles in the EU in 2019 is 122.4 grams per kilometer. Therefore, car factories that cannot reduce carbon emissions can only go to exchanges purchase carbon credit to smoothly sell vehicles. If this regulation is ignored, manufacturers will face high fines. The suppliers of carbon credit come from manufacturers who are committed to manufacturing low-emission vehicles, such as Tesla. These car factories can profit from carbon credit in the carbon credit market, and the surplus from selling carbon credit must also be continuously invested in reductions carbon-related projects. To what extent has the carbon credit market developed? Global carbon pricing overview. Carbon pricing controls greenhouse gases, accounting for 21.5% of the total. In 2021, the global carbon pricing mechanism will grow to 64, controlling 21.5% of greenhouse gases. Compared with 2020, the main increase in the proportion of controlled greenhouse gases comes from the pilot carbon trading in China in February, bringing an increase of 7.4%. What is carbon pricing? Carbon pricing includes carbon tax and carbon exchange price. In addition to using the carbon trading market mechanism, The government can also achieve the effect of internalizing external costs by levying carbon taxes. Only 3.76% carbon pricing meets the standard. Carbon pricing standards vary, and only 3.76% carbon price meets the Paris Agreement's 2020 pricing level of $40/80 per ton. The only exchanges that meet the price level are Europe and Switzerland. By 2030, the price of carbon must be raised to $100 per ton to achieve the goal of controlling global warming within 2 degrees Celsius. At present, many countries around the world have established or plan to establish carbon exchanges. IHS Markit Global Carbon Index. The internationally available index to track the price of carbon credit is the IHS Markit Global Carbon Index, which covers carbon exchanges in Europe and the United States, including European Union Carbon Allowance, California Carbon Allowance and Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. In addition to policy factors affecting the price of carbon credit, extreme weather severely increases power generation, or high economic growth brings more power generation and industrial carbon emissions, which will push up the price of carbon credit. Another factor is that when natural gas and crude oil prices are high, the power generation industry will switch to coal-fired power generation, which will also increase carbon emissions and push up the price of carbon credit. When the whole world invests in environmental protection, this is what investors need to pay most attention to. I believe you can also see the future trend. Thanks for watching. See you next time.